You and I are in a relationship, let's just say, and we get into a tiff. And because I like to fight, I keep putting salt on this wound, and this tiny thing grows bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. What do you think keeps me from apologizing to you? I think it just takes a long time for you to realize that you're a piece of shit, for all of us. And that's the best place to be, because you don't really take yourself that seriously anymore. You don't take, certainly, other people seriously. It doesn't mean that you don't know the things out there that require seriousness. You do know them. But you also realize that to take certain things seriously requires a great amount of mental energy and physical energy to will them to life. If, for example, you were to come to the office, but you have a certain expression, there's a certain body language that you have, you're kind of sad, you're kind of angry, and I ask, so Anna, what the hell is going on with you? What are you doing in my office, poisoning the environment? Depending on what it is, it's always going to be difficult revealing yourself to another who happens to be a stranger. There was a movie with Al Pacino and Michelle Pfeiffer. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called Frankie and Johnny. Frankie is Michelle Pfeiffer and Johnny is Al Pacino. Al Pacino is serving time or has served time. He now has a job in this coffee shop. The waitress dies. The following day, he goes to the funeral. Michelle Pfeiffer asks him, you don't even know her. Why did you come to the funeral service? And he says, when human beings go to bed at night, they go to bed with a good amount of regret. They put their hopes and dreams under the pillow. When they wake up, they take them out and they want to kind of live them out while awake, only to realize it's kind of difficult. Long story short, they get into a relationship and she's brushing her teeth, and Al Pacino, while sitting at the counter, looks at Michelle Pfeiffer and says to her, can you take off your clothes? She says, no. Take them off, please. Again, she says, no. That's a ridiculous request. Why are you asking me? I just want to know that you trust me enough that when I tell you to just take them off, you take them off. And there's a lot of things you have to overcome, because you're talking about another human being judging you. The idea that Jean-Paul Sartre had mentioned many, many years ago, that other people are hell, that maybe you have a question to ask in this class, but because of my attitude, because the fact that sometimes I can be a jerk and an ass, your hand remains down and your question will never come up. Because when you do ask a question, I may make fun of you. And you realize that you asked this question to kind of free yourself from some repressed emotions. Maybe you have this deep-seated relationship with this question or a particular event that now you want to express, but I make fun of it. And other people make fun of it. Even if I was not to make fun of your question, but the question happened to reveal something about who you are, what you are, where you've come from, what you've gone through. And you have no idea how these people are going to look at that question, i.e. look at you and judge you. And so in revealing yourself, you have to be okay with another human being judging you. Now, it's very different when you remove your clothes before someone that you know and you trust and you have a history with. To be asked to remove your outfit, your clothing by someone you just met, that's a very, very difficult thing to do. Unless you just happen to be kind of in the prostitution business, and where you just have diarrhea of the mouth, that you really have no self-respect and you're just looking for some free ears to kind of just ram into those ears with your story. And nobody really cares for your story, but you have found some free ears nevertheless, so you just keep telling them who and what you are and about your past. If on the other hand, there are some serious things about you and you hold them very valuable, to some extent maybe even hold them very sacred, you say very much like your body, I am going to keep my stories very private as I will keep my body very private, and I will reveal my body only to those, or only to him or her that I trust and I love. And so you become monogamous in that sense. If you don't give a shit as much, then you kind of just reveal who and what you are to anyone who comes by. And you find them worthy of sharing with them a couple of information about you. For most of us who are not very professional in that regards, it's very, very tough. Very, very tough. It's not difficult to have sex. Take off your clothes, and when someone goes inside you, you go inside someone, it's finished. But to open up emotionally, that's tough. Intellectually, it's easy. You read a couple of books, you come to class, you talk about them, and you go home. Nothing, easy. But to open up emotionally, that takes a different kind of training. And I think the task of Stoicism, or maybe philosophy, really is to reveal to you, as Tolstoy would say, that there is a part of you that's made of the stars. You have a great amount of light inside you, the kingdom of gold. But there is also a good part of you that is made of dung. You are just shit. And you also have to understand the nature of society and what it does to you and how it's created. You also have to understand advertisement. You also have to understand that you're nothing really but the experiences given to you by other people. They're not your own. There is nothing about you that belongs to you. The only thing you do once in a while is falsely claim ownership to them. And Stoicism basically argues the only thing you can do is study your emotions, study why they're there, how they're there, why do they push you around all the time. And once you graduate from that particular study, then you can kind of be free from them. Like Epictetus, you're a slave and you're able to kind of detach yourself from all the emotions created by the forces outside of you. You take them seriously, at the same time you don't really much care for them. And then you can just open up, make fun of all sorts of things, including yourself. I think if you believe also in biological evolution, there is something about us that recognizes that the world is dangerous, that you can't just open yourself up to anyone out there. They could use that information against you. من از بیگانگان هرگز ننالم که با من هر چه کرد آن آشنا کرد. You've seen the movie K-Pax? K-Pax is with Kevin Spacey, really good actor. Spacey is supposedly from this planet called K-Pax, and he lands down here to kind of study human beings, human nature, human society. He goes to his therapist's house, and while the therapist is engaged in entertaining his guests, the wife comes in and she opens up and she tells him all sorts of private things, and all of a sudden she bursts into tears saying to him, I'm sorry, I don't know why I just told you all those things that are so private to me and my husband. And Kevin Spacey, i.e. K-Pax, looks at her and says, you told them to me because I can't hurt you. You don't know me. I can't use them against you. The Persian poem is from Hafez, that if you pay close attention to all the hurts and the wounds that live inside you, they are really caused by the people closest to you. You run to your father for a hug, he screams at you. You give all you have to your boyfriend or your girlfriend, they reject you. As Albert Camus would say, you throw all of your dreams and hopes into life, but life demolishes you. And then all of a sudden you realize maybe it's best not to give all of who and what you are to another. Maybe there's certain parts of you should remain to yourself and only be given. And maybe that's the reason why we have religion. If there are things you want to keep hidden from the public, from even people closest to you, because you can't really trust them, go to church, cry them out, because God can't hurt you. I can. One of the nice things about this particular teacher from Armenia, Gurdjieff, his task was to figure out your stories. Like a good therapist, he would figure out your trigger points. And then from that point on, the only thing he would do was to push them. He would keep pushing them. And you would scream and scream and scream until you realize that your screaming doesn't do anything. In fact, the trigger point doesn't mean anything anymore either. You become indifferent towards it. Now you're free. So it depends, on who you are, who you're working with, what you're ready for. If you read that book, Daughter of Fire, what you have in the book is you have this guy and he has this woman in his hand. He can toy with her. And his task is to set her free. And so he keeps toying with her for like 600 pages until she submits. And then the only thing that she's bothered by for the next like 7, 8, 9, 10 years is that this man on whom she depended for everything, he's dead. Then she had to overcome that. And then she begins to write and she begins to talk and all those things. It's much better to be broken by someone who knows. It's much better to give a 2x4 to a seasoned carpenter than to a 5-year-old. The 5-year-old can cut, but the lumber will go to waste. What usually happens to us, we are given to life, and life just toys with us. And you try to kind of figure out what to do with all the brokenness inside you. There is a reason why you go to a therapy session. If you happen to have a very, very good therapist, that person just lasers onto the issues and then slowly helps you look at those issues and then deal with the emotions that are caused by looking at those issues and then trying to give you the proper tools to deal with those issues. Now, these are different stages you have to go through. It takes a long time for someone just to be able to see. It takes a long time for someone just to be able to feel the things that they see, and then overcome those feelings. It takes another few years to kind of figure out what tools they need to overcome. And then it takes another few years to kind of figure out how to best use these tools, and then eventually use the tools. And then because you're new at every stage, you have a mess around you for the first 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And then at the age of 50 or 60, now you know exactly what lumber you need, if you need pressure treated, if you need cedar, if you need just regular, what kind of saws you need, all those things. It just takes a long time. What's his name? Was it Diogenes? Yes, Diogenes. Diogenes was the founder of the Cynic school. One day, he started masturbating in public. Just close your eyes, visualize that. And he's taken before a judge. And the judge, begins to ask him some questions. Diogenes looks at this guy and says, "Your Honor, have you never masturbated?" "Yes, I have." "Do you think it's normal, organic, natural?" "Yes." "Should I be ashamed of something that's so organic?" Eventually he's released. But you have to understand a lot of things to kind of come to a place where you can just be open. Sometimes you can be open with people and then you regret being open. It's like having sex, realizing it's just with the wrong person. What is beauty? If you look at our physical evolution, we used to walk around naked, hunting Godzilla and being hunted by them. We eventually began to understand the seasons, agriculture came about, we invented the wheel, so traveling became easier, domestication of animals, and then now you have permanent settlements. You begin to have a bona fide relationship with a land. But this is the place that you've grown wheat for the past few thousands of years. The land belongs to you. You have a history with it. You bury people in that land, so you only also have relationships and memories with family members, with friends, with the soldiers who fought on your behalf. And that land has produced lots of rituals, lots of ceremonies. It's kind of like the stuff we talked about with drugs, that you don't look at them as simply plants, but you look at them as plants who can teach you a few things about yourself, about life, about mystery, about God. If you look at, for example, sculpture from the Egyptian time, then the Minoans, then the Greeks, then the Romans, then the Middle Ages, what you realize is that this particular craft has just become better and better and better. And its zenith really happened in the Greek era, the golden age of Greece, which was, for the first time, what you have is these pieces of these statues where the jaw is square and the cheekbones are high and the lips are full. And you look at the body, the stomach is no longer flabby. It's like six-pack, like Cristiano Ronaldo. Everything is so well defined. And then you have Greeks' involvement with math, and math being like these divine numbers, very much like what Pythagoras had argued, that if you really want to understand God, you really need to understand math, and you really need to understand order, because in it there is beauty hidden, but you have to decode all of them. And then all of a sudden the nature of architecture changed. They want to make sure that there is this wonderful story, it's in a book called The Teachers of Gurdjieff. It's about a Westerner who goes to the Middle East to figure out if any of those teachers are still alive. And so he's told to go to the bazaar somewhere and go to this rug shop or carpet shop and just wait there. And so this guy goes and he sits for an hour, then 2 hours, and 3 hours. Tired, he sits on a collection of rugs. And all of a sudden this stranger comes forth and says to him, "Do you think I can buy that rug? Do you think it's suitable for me to pray on?" And this Westerner who lacks certain knowledge of the culture looks at the rug and says, "Yeah, I don't see why not. It's a great looking rug." And the stranger just slaps him really hard, saying that pay close attention to the colors and the design and the harmony. And you realize it counters the flow of your psyche. And you only say it's a good rug because you don't understand anything. So if I was to kind of answer your question in a very casual and ridiculous and infantile way, I would say the following. At the age of 18, you become interested in people who are physically attractive. And those who are physically attractive don't require very much work. And they're shallow, which makes the relationship go easy and smooth for a while. Because everything revolves around like pleasure. And those kinds of pleasure are easily obtainable. They don't involve conversations, especially the ones that have some philosophical reflection in them or political reflection in them. You know, you guys can spend like hours in bed having sex, ordering pizza, watching a movie. It's easy enough. There comes a point where, and it happens organically, there comes a point where you say, you know, there is nothing wrong with the sex and there is nothing wrong with ordering pizza from Zachary's or Round Table. But once in a while, you know, I want to look this person in the eye and like have like a nice conversation, something that's meaningful. Now, what you have done is you have elevated your definition of beauty. Yes, they have a beautiful body, as Socrates would say, he's got a beautiful body, but does he have a beautiful mind as well? And so you realize all of a sudden, without really knowing, that all of a sudden there is another thing upon you, another cross you have to carry, and figure out whether this person can think well. And you realize, yes, he can think well. Then you move to a different stage where you say, you know, he has a great body, he's got, you know, very sort of like reflective tools, he's read a lot of books. I don't feel any passion. And by passion, I don't mean confusion. Because sometimes passion and confusion are you know, when you're confused, you're like desperate, you're like hungry. And I suppose passion could be the same thing, but it's something that you understand. It's like a passion that a father has for a daughter or a son. Parents have for their children, that they worry about them. They want the best for them. It's because they understand the dangerousness of life. Their hopes and dreams for their kids are healthy. Then there comes a point where you say, you know, they feel good, they think good, their body is great. Then you go to them and say, so how about we move in together? And you say, well, are they mature enough to commit? And you're at a place where if they say no, you have no problem walking away. Because you have been saturated by the physical beauty, by the intellectual beauty, by the emotional beauty. And as you grow, as you mature, your definition of aesthetics or beauty become much more complete, much fuller, much richer. You expect more, you demand more. Someone with just good looks no longer please you. Someone with just being able to think no longer please you. Someone who can feel and think at the same time no longer pleases you. Then, let's say he says yes or she says yes to the commitment. Then you go to the next step. Do you want to get married? That's another aspect of beauty in the relationship that you want to get to. Do you want to have a family? And all those things mean, does the person have the ability to keep a job, to make money, to save money, to spend that money on the right things, to have the right sort of friends so they don't contaminate the relationship? Once you have children, then your definition of beauty changes all the time. When I was single, I didn't mind having people around who used to smoke or drink once in a while. But when I got a bit more serious in my life, I refrained having those people in my life, period. So the point I suppose I'm trying to make is, you know, imagine everyone to be a piece of art. That's what people are, a piece of art in progress. The question is, at what stage are you? What sort of an artwork do you want to have? And it's a story I've shared in the class. I remember calling this Persian woman, she's a pianist. I knew her from a long time ago. She used to play in gatherings for us once in a while. And I said, listen, would you mind teaching my daughter some piano? And the first thing she asked is, how old is she? Oh, she's like 5. No. What do you mean no? Just come to the house, teach her some piano. No. Why? I don't have the patience for 5-year-olds anymore. I mean, it's wonderful to kind of see a 5-year-old and laugh at them and hopes and dreams about them. It's great. But I'm no longer seeking money. I no longer see myself working with 5-year-olds. I want advanced students. You know, curiosity is no longer as interesting. That's the way I would, but different people define it differently.